Triumphal Entry, Palm Sunday. Close your eyes and let your breath grow slow and easy. We are going to travel together, far across time, to a warm, golden land where ancient olive trees whisper in the breeze, and the air carries the scent of earth and wildflowers. Simply rest and listen. It was springtime in Judea, and the great city of Jerusalem was alive with thousands of pilgrims who had come from every direction to celebrate the Passover feast. The roads were dusty and warm. Children ran through narrow stone streets. The smell of lamb and bread and olive oil drifted from open doorways, filling the air with a welcoming warmth. And yet, on a quiet hillside just outside the city, on the slopes of the Mount of Olives, where gnarled old trees cast long shadows, something was about to begin. Something the world had been waiting for, even if it did not yet know it. Jesus had been walking for days with his disciples, a small and faithful group who had followed him through sun and rain, across the shores of Galilee and the desert roads. They had seen blind eyes open, storms stilled at the sound of his voice, and most recently, a man named Lazarus called back from the tomb, walking out alive and blinking in the light. And now they were here, just a hillside away from Jerusalem. As they neared the small villages of Bethphage and Bethany, Jesus stopped and turned to two of his disciples. His voice was calm and certain, the way it always was. He told them to go ahead into the village, where they would find a young donkey tied near a doorway, one that had never been ridden. They were to untie it and bring it to him. If anyone asked, they were simply to say, "The Lord has need of it." The two disciples went, trusting him as they always did. And just as he had said, there was the colt, standing quietly in the road, patient and still in the golden light. When the owners stepped forward to ask what they were doing, the disciples spoke the words they had been given. Without argument, the owners nodded and let them go. They led the young donkey back to Jesus and draped their own cloaks gently across its back. And Jesus, quietly and without ceremony, mounted the animal and began the slow, winding descent down the hillside toward the city below. Word of him had already been spreading, carried on the lips of pilgrims, whispered in the temple courts, passed from village to village. And so as people began to see him coming down that golden road, something stirred in the crowd. It started simply. One person pulled off their cloak and laid it across the dusty path. Then another did the same. Then another. Someone reached up into a palm tree and broke off a great, sweeping branch, and suddenly others were doing the same, cutting branches from the fields, holding them up, waving them overhead, scattering them like a living carpet before the slow and steady hooves of the little donkey. And then the singing began. "Hosanna," the people cried, a word ancient and full, a cry that meant "save us now," a plea wrapped inside a song of praise. "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." The sound of it rolled outward like a warm wave, filling the valley, rising off the old limestone walls, lifting into the wide blue sky. Those who walked ahead sang. Those who followed behind sang. Pilgrims from Galilee, families from distant towns, people who had rushed out from the city gates, all of them together. One great voice in the warm afternoon air. And in the midst of all of it, Jesus rode on, quiet, steady, unhurried, on a borrowed donkey, on a road of cloaks and palm branches, into a city just beginning to understand who had arrived. The ancient prophet Zechariah had written of this moment hundreds of years before, a king coming to Jerusalem, humble and gentle, riding on a donkey. Not in armor, not on a war horse, not with the crash of armies, but like this, exactly like this, in peace and quietness, with the calm certainty of someone who had come not to conquer, but to serve. Some of the religious leaders pressed through the crowd and urged Jesus to silence his followers. But Jesus said only that if the people were to fall silent, the very stones along the road would cry out in their place. Then, as the road curved and the full sight of Jerusalem opened before him, its white walls gleaming in the sun, its great temple rising above all else, Jesus stopped, and he wept. not for himself. He wept for the city, speaking to it tenderly, wishing it could see the peace that was being offered to it on this very day. Then he kept going, because that was who he was. He passed through the city gates and made his way to the temple. But when he arrived, its courts were filled with the noise of merchants and money changers and dove sellers, the clatter of commerce where there should have been quiet prayer. And so Jesus, with calm and absolute authority, overturned the tables and drove the merchants out. "My house shall be called a house of prayer," he said, "but you have made it a den of robbers." In the stillness that followed, the blind came to him, the lame came to him, and he healed them one by one, right there in the temple courts. Children wandering through the colonnade saw it all and began to sing, small, bright voices lifting the same words they had heard in the streets. "Hosanna to the Son of David." The religious leaders frowned, but Jesus smiled and said simply, "Out of the mouths of children you have prepared praise." As the long afternoon faded and the sun sank behind the western hills, Jesus quietly withdrew from the city. He walked back through the gates and made his way along the familiar road to Bethany, back to the olive trees, the open sky, and the first pale stars appearing in the deepening blue above. And so ended Palm Sunday, a day of palm branches and a borrowed donkey, of cloaks spread on dusty roads and voices singing Hosanna in the warm Jerusalem air. A day of tears and tenderness, of tables overturned and children singing and doves released into the open sky. A humble, gentle, extraordinary beginning to the most important week the world would ever know. Let your breath slow now in and out. The city is quiet. The palms are still. The stars are out over Bethany, and the night is soft and warm and full of peace. Rest now. The story will be here when morning comes. Good night.